So electromagnetic spectrum, when you say electromagnetic spectrum is the range of frequencies or wavelength in all frequencies. Lahat ng existing frequency natin ngayon ay fully occupied na. Ibig sabihin, meron ng dinesignate na authority kung ano yung gagamit ng ganitong frequency. By the way, in the Philippines, the authority is NTC, no? National Telecommunications Commission. While in the US, it's FCC, or the Federal Communications Commission. Now, itong mga national bodies na to, since we are all under, almost all countries are under United Nations, merong binuong isang body for the communications authorities of the different countries na magkaroon ng kasunduan sa frequency. Ang body na yon is called ITU, International Telecommunications Union. Dito, meron silang nilalabas na mga recommendations such that all components, lahat na equipment na gagamitin for specific application, example, AM transmitter or AM receiver or FM system, dapat nagko-conform doon sa specific na frequency na paggagamitan. Okay? So, ano to? Control dito. Control ditong frequency natin. And these frequencies, for example, private company, they are required to pay annual fees sa government. Isa yan sa mga means of income ng government. Regulated siya, at the same time, mayroong bayad ang frequency. Kaya kunyari pag sinabi ni telecoms company like Smart or Globe na we are operating at quad band. Ano ibig sabihin ng quad band? Meron silang 4 na bandwidth na binigay ng NTC na pwede sila mag-operate. May equivalent bayad yun, guys. That's why hindi free ang tawag at saka ang text. May equivalent payment. So, when you say electromagnetic spectrum, from the term electromagnet, merong tinatawag na electric field at magnetic field because when a signal is modulated and it will undergo free space, siyempre papadala yun ng antenna. No? The antenna is a transducer. A transducer is a device that converts one form of energy to another. So the electrical signals na dadaan sa kanya, sa antenna, is being converted by the antenna into electromagnetic waves. Parang mic, no? Pag nagsalita ka sa mic is a transducer. Your acoustic voice, acoustic energy will be converted, di ba sound energy yan? Will be converted into electric signal. So, ganun din yung antenna. From electric, gagawin niya electromagnetic. And when the waves are being converted into electromagnetic waves, meron tayong tinatawag na E-field tsaka H-field. E-field means electric field, and H-field means magnetic field. They vary at a specific rate, pero periodic siya. The field intensities goes or fluctuates up and down. So, ito yung itsura niya, guys. So, if this is the source, papunta sa direction na to, the electric field might be vertical, the magnetic field is horizontal. Parating ganon, guys. No? If the electric field is vertical, that means the magnetic field is horizontal. Ang tawag natin sa ganito, guys, ganitong scenario is polarization. Polarization is defined as the orientation of electric field. In this case, the orientation of the antenna is dependent on the polarization. Remember that, ha? The orientation of the antenna is dependent on the polarization. Pag ang antenna nakatayo, yung ginagamit sa mga two-way radio, that means the electric field is vertical, para perpendicular to the earth. Pag naman yung mga TV antenna nakadapa, that means the electric field is parallel to the earth. So that's how we detect electromagnetic waves. So yung mode of transmission, whether it's vertical or horizontally polarized, will also be dictated by the authority, NTC. Yun yung ating standards, no? Tandaan nyo, ha? They are always in 90 degrees. Pag ang electric field ay perpendicular, that means ang magnetic field is parallel. They are 90 degrees. Kaya ang tawag natin dyan, guys, transverse electromagnetic wave or TEM wave. Ibig sabihin ng transverse, they are 90 degrees with each other. Ito yan. So yung separation niya is 90 degrees. That's how the electromagnetic waves travel through space. So the signal's frequency is of course measured in cycles per second, or otherwise known as hertz. All electrical and electronic signals that radiate into free space fall into the electromagnetic spectrum, which is this one. So you can see here that we have different bands of frequencies. We start with 30 hertz to 300 hertz. So ang tawag natin doon, guys, is ELF, or extremely low frequency. VF means voice frequency. 300 hertz siya hanggang 3 kilohertz. That's the voice frequency. VLF means very low frequency. LF means low frequency. Then we have medium frequency, high frequency, very high frequency, ultra high frequency, super high frequency, and extremely high frequency. So these are the different bands of frequencies, and you can see here that nagdadagdag ng zero. Ang first digit parating 3. No? Example, 30 hertz to 300 hertz. Magdagdag ka lang ng 0, yun yung range niya. 30 to 300, 300 to 3,000, 3,000 to 30,000, 30,000 to 300,000, gano'n yung range. Now, guys, I want you to memorize this. No? Ang pinaka, request ko lang sa inyo, guys, is to remember this. Tandaan nyo na ang TV, ang ginagamit ng TV broadcast is VHF. Ito yung VHF. Isipin nyo na si ABS-CBN, guys. Ang TV, binigyan na NTC ng 6 MHz. And ABS-CBN is transmitting at 54 to 60 MHz. 6 MHz, di ba? So, ang starting frequency ng ABS-CBN is 54 and it ends at 60. Isipin nyo lang kung nasaan yung range na yun. Kung 54 to 60 MHz ang TV, anong range yan? Dito yan. Nasa loob siya ng 30 MHz at saka 300 MHz. Ito lang tandaan nyo. VHF. And then, marunong kayong mag-adjust pabalik. Sabihin, pag tumaas ka ng dagdagan mo pa ng 0, UHF na siya. Another 0, SHF na siya. Okay? And then below, pabawas na para pabawas. Of course, HVU. Very high, no? Pag pababa, kung meron ka rito LF, low frequency, VU. Kaya walang ULF sa, sa lower frequency. Pero merong ELF. Okay, so I don't know how you will do it, pero tandaan nyo lang yung frequency ng TV. It's in the VHF range. Okay? ABS-CBN also has a UHF channel, yung Studio 23. And it is operating here in the UHF range. Okay? So dalawa yung ginagamit sa TV, isang VHF, isang UHF. You can explore more about this. No? You can try to explore Google. And you can check there that ang VHF channels mula channel 2 hanggang channel 13. While VHF is from channel 14 up to, kung di ako nagkakamali, channel 69. Ang pinaka dulo niya. Yung MF, dito nag-fall yung AM. Di ba? Sabi natin, ang DCMM, sa is 30, di ba? 630 kHz. Ang DCBB is 594, 594 kHz. Nasa ang range yan. Nandito siya. It's 300 kHz hanggang 3 MHz. Nandiyan nagpo-fall yung AM. Nasaan yung FM? Ang alam natin, ang FM is from 88. Di ba? Ang pinakaunang-unang station sa kaliwa is 88.3. And then it ends with 107.5 Win Radio. It's megahertz. 88.3 megahertz hanggang 107.5 megahertz. Saan siya pasok? Sa VHF. Ibig sabihin ng FM pala, bukod sa TV, meron ding FM ang VHF because it falls here, yung 88 megahertz, no? Dito siya pasok hanggang 108. This is the range of VHF. Okay? So, in terms of wavelengths, ito yung conversion natin. Mamaya papakita natin yung conversion. Pero, ang term natin is that pagka lumagpas ka ng SHF, itong millimeter wave na ang tawag sa kanya. And then infrared, ito yung visible light, no? From 0.7 micrometer hanggang 0.4 micrometer na mas mahaba yung red dahil mas mababa yung frequency niya and mas maikli yung violet kasi mas mataas yung frequency. So pagka beyond to the left of red is infrared, to the right of violet is called ultraviolet. And then beyond that, we have now X-rays, gamma rays, cosmic rays, etc. So this is the optical spectrum. It is in the terahertz na siya, guys. So terahertz na yung ginagamit na frequency niya. Okay? So this is the radio spectrum na in tabulation form. As I said, ang starting number niya is 3, dagdagan mo na ng 0. And these are the equivalent units. This is taken from Frenzel. Okay, frequency. What is frequency? Frequency is the number of complete cycles in a given period, such as seconds, kadalasan per second, bibira per minute. Pagka per second, cycles per second, then it's called hertz. So yung 1 cycle per second is called 1 hertz. So yung ating power line, 60 hertz yun. Ibig sabihin, in a second, meron na dumang 60 cycles. No? 60 cycles per second also means 60 hertz. So kung isipin mo, radio, no? Yung 96.3 megahertz, ilang cycles yun? 96.3 megahertz means 96,300,000 cycles per second. Ganong kataas. Now, yung processor ng computer, ilan yung speed ng processor nyo? 3 gigahertz daw. Ano ibig sabihin ng giga? Means times 10 to the 9. Ibig sabihin, in 1 second, merong clock cycle na 3 billion, no? 3 billion cycles. Ganun kabilis ang processing ng clock ng PC ngayon, no? Nasa 3 gigahertz. Okay, so that's the definition of frequency. And the wavelength is defined as the 1 cycle or 1 wavelength is defined as 1 complete revolution. Okay, so 1 complete cycle is called 1 wavelength or 1 cycle. And the reciprocal of 1 cycle is frequency. Okay, so period is 1 over frequency or vice versa. Frequency is 1 over period. Period, take note, no, period is seconds. 1 divided by frequency, 1 over hertz is second. What's the difference between period and wavelength? Kasi interpretation natin pareho lang. 1 cycle, if this is 1 cycle, sabihin natin 1 second yan. Wavelength is not in terms of second, that's in terms of length. Kaya nga tinawag na wavelength, pwedeng in terms of meters. So ang difference niya is that wavelength is in terms of distance. Since we're dealing with electromagnetic waves, according to James Clerk Maxwell, yung father of electromagnetics, siya yung gumawa ng tinatawag ng Maxwell's equations. According to him, based on his discovery, that electromagnetic waves travel at the same speed of light. Kaya ang formula na wavelength is C over F. And based on these calculations, the speed of light is specifically approximately equal to 3 times 10 to the 8. Kaya nato doon significant na 3. No? So pag dinivide mo yung meters per second na cycles per second, ang matitira sa left side mo is meters. Kaya pagka alam mo yung frequency, alam mo yung, alam naman natin yung speed of light, then mako-compute mo yung wavelength. Okay? So, yun yung difference, ha? Period is 1 cycle, pero ang unit niya is seconds. Wavelength is also 1 cycle, pero ang measurement niya is meters. Okay, so, for example, find the wavelengths of 150 megahertz, 430 megahertz, 8 megahertz, and 750 kilohertz. Comparing these 4 given frequencies, we assume that the shortest frequency or the shortest wavelength is this one, this 430 megahertz. And the longest wavelength is ito, kilohertz. Tingnan natin. So for letter A, 300 million or 3 times 10 to the 8 divided by 150 megahertz. That's 2 meters. For letter B, 430 megahertz, that's 0.697 meter. Ito yung pinakamaikli dapat, 0.697 meter. 8 megahertz ito, so 37.5 meters. Ito 750, ito dapat yung may malawak na wavelength. And that's 400 meters. See? So ang pinakamaikli is 0.697 meter. That's 430 megahertz. Ang pinakamahaba ay 750 kilohertz, which is 400 meters. Now, take note that wavelength is very important because this is how you measure the antenna. The length of the antenna is half wave. Kaya pag nakakarinig kayo ng half wave dipole, it is actual the length of the antenna. So kung isipin mo guys, kung ang frequency natin ay nasa AM, ito kunyari, di ba? 500 DC double B is nasa ganito. Sabihin, ganito kahaba pala yung antenna na kailangan para makapag-transmit ka ng AM or makapag-receive. So sa AM transmitter, yung mismong tower, yun na yung mismong antenna na ginagamit nila to transmit AM. And for FM or TV, like this one, ganito lang kaikli yung ating antenna. So ibig sabihin, yung antenna na gagamitin mo, kung ito yung operating frequency, 1 meter lang kasi half wave eh. So kung 2 meters yung lambda over 2 is 1 meter. Ganun lang kahaba yung antenna. Sabihin, practical. So yung FM tsaka TV, practical yung mga size ng antenna, unlike AM. Pagka naman Wi-Fi, alam niyo ba yung frequency ng Wi-Fi, guys? 2.4 gigahertz. So kung yung gigahertz niya, sabihin, mas mataas pa dito sa pinakamataas na given. No? Kaya yung mga antenna natin sa Wi-Fi na modem, ganito na lang kaikli. The antenna of the device depends on the wavelength of the transmission. Yung mga cellphone natin, guys, nasa na ang antenna nito? Nasa loob. Kasi gigahertz na yung ginagamit na frequency, nasa strip line or nasa PCB na yung mga antenna ng cellphone. That's the practical application of discussion of wavelength. Bandwidth. Bandwidth naman is the portion of the electromagnetic spectrum occupied by the signal. When you say bandwidth, is doon lang siya nag-ooperate. For example, sa TV nga is 54 to 60 megahertz. This is the frequency range over which a receiver or other electronic circuit operates. For example, 300 Hz to 3000 Hz, yan yung voice, di ba? So ito yung, ang formula niya is F2 minus F1. Ito yung F2, ito yung F1. Kung ano yung difference niya, yun lang yung bandwidth. And it can also be solved using this formula. Resonant frequency divided by Q. Resonant frequency is computed either as an arithmetic mean or geometric mean. And quality factor is dependent on the component used. Okay. So, for example, a commonly used frequency range is 902 to 928 megahertz in UHF, for example. What is the width of this band? So, sa una, ito yung F1 tsaka F2. 928 minus 902, then it is 26 megahertz. Example, a television occupies a 6 megahertz bandwidth. If the low frequency limit of channel 2, which I mentioned kanina, is 54 megahertz, what is the upper frequency limit? So all you have to do is add. 54 is the lower limit, therefore the higher limit is 60 megahertz. Okay, thank you very much for your time, guys.